rumbled
Plus, it's a
along.
small city. It's a small city.
Yeah.
I think, but it's a great city. Great food, great people, super friendly.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's got the whole gentrification thing going on. Like the
Like
jewelry
everywhere.
district and the waterfront is totally different now. They got a big pedestrian bridge, all kinds of new restaurants.
Like 2 major universities, like Providence, Brown.
Yep.
Like literally world-class university. I don't know. You just think it would be like a little more but
Yeah.
But it's obviously, I mean, it's going that way. Coming in.
You know, it is. They're getting a lot more Boston commuters too. That's the other thing, which is
it's
definitely helped the downtown.
It's the best reverse commute for someone like me or Bill. Coming down there, it takes a half hour to get to Providence. Same time that it takes me to get into Boston. I commuted there for a few years. It's great. Great little commute. Then you're downtown with all the great shops. Welcome, everybody, to another week of Wealth Wisdom, where we're helping you build wealth and legacy.
Companies are like an organism trying to survive.
It's always a risk when you're investing in a company that's purely tied to someone's brand.
45% of Americans have gone into debt for a Disney trip. Gambling stocks. This is the first thing we're going on this week. Flutter Entertainment, the parent company behind sports betting, gambling platforms, FanDuel, and Paddy Power, announced a new long-term growth plan, authorized a massive repurchase initiative Wednesday, just ahead of its Investor Day presentation. The Flut stock rallied early Wednesday to break out, and the rival DraftKings, I know we have a lot of opinions there, also jumped on the report. Flutter estimated a regulated total addressable market, that's TAM for everyone listening at home, $368 billion by 2030. What do you guys think of this? I'd love to hear your opinion, Eric, on is that TAM in fact real? What are your thoughts around like growth prospects for the industry as a whole with gambling stocks?
Yeah, I think it is. And we're seeing DraftKings, which we own, full disclosure, like giving out similar numbers.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with new states approving sports betting, online sports betting. And then also the continued growth of viewership of these sports. I actually pulled a couple of stats for you guys. NFL averaged about 18 million viewers per game in 2023, which was a 7% increase from the prior year. And now they're starting to expand internationally. And obviously the NFL sports brand is big for these online betting platforms. Then another thing is the soccer segment in the US. So you're talking about like MLS and then also viewership abroad, growth rate of about 17.8% annualized. That's what's expected from 2021 through 2026. And that's viewership. So if these sports continue to grow, you're more than likely to see these online sports betting companies also continue to grow. Bill, what are you seeing on your end with DraftKings and Flutter?
Yeah, those points are obviously very valid. And when looking at the growth in that market, in that area, and it's similar to what you're saying there. I just, I'm going to talk maybe more on like personal, right? I probably growing up, I remember cousins of mine always maybe placing a wager or two, you know what I mean? A bet here and there as we're sitting around at Sunday dinner. So it's interesting to see how that was done with maybe their local bookie. Right now, now they have an app, right? Everyone has an app. Yeah. And I think it just adds a little bit to the entertainment of that, right? If you have a small wager, hopefully inconsequential to your financial success, I'll preface that. But if it's something just to make it a little more entertaining, right? Just it makes that game a little bit more entertaining. I think as that viewership grows and people want to maybe add a little bit to it, it's definitely an expanding market. There's some growth, you know what I mean? A lot of growth there.
Are you guys saying that the viewership is increasing the TAM of DraftKings and other gambling stocks? Or do you think it's the vice versa? Like, I'm listening to this. It's if I can now bet on a game, it might be more interesting to watch that game. So is that increasing viewership, or is it a chicken or the egg scenario? I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
I would lean towards symbiotic, and that's, exactly. But just like anecdotally, my younger sister was telling me all about these bets she'd place on NFL games, and I don't remember her ever once watching an NFL game growing up. So it's, I think they're working together hand in hand. Yeah. I don't know
Oh.
what you think, Justin.
No, it's interesting. I'm not a huge sports fan at all. Just full disclosure, I just don't have time between everything. I do watch a game here or there, but I can't quote you though every roster for every team, just like some other guys. And it's anecdotally, I'm not into it, but I think the sports betting has definitely increased my. If I have some money on the line, I'm watching. Like it's way more exciting. Bill, I mean, if you're at home, are you watching every game or only the games you put in?
So my transformation as a sports fan went from someone who could dictate the amount of like homers Mike Greenwell had in a Red Sox uniform as a child to I could pretty much tell you where every single college player in the draft went to college, watching every single I would watch football from when I wasn't playing a sport on Saturdays in the fall. I was watching every college football game, right? When I wasn't doing something else, I was watching football all day on Sunday. To now, maybe I'll catch 3/4 of one game on, if I'm lucky, on a Sunday. It's just with life, kids, everything like that. It's dampened things a little bit, right? Even the Monday night games would catch the Monday night games. Now I'm like, oh God, it's a little late for me. Maybe I'll catch a half. If it's a Boston team, I'll watch, right? Or I'll try to watch the whole thing. But even then, I probably won't catch the whole thing. But that being said, I've never been a bettor, right? I think when I was in college, I remember, and it was like the NFL wildcard weekend. I remember I placed four bets, excuse me. Promptly lost all four. The bookie who I placed the bet through at the time was like, oh no, you didn't bet on that fourth game. And I'm like, pretty sure I did. But I don't know if it was just a mercy killing or what, but that was the last time I bet on anything in years. And then I was attempting to do it this latest Super Bowl. And actually the bets I wanted to bet on, I would have won. However, I couldn't seem to link my bank account with DraftKings. The day of, there was having some type of issue through the Plaid app that kind of attaches your bank account. Didn't do that. And then I think I would like to make actually a few bets. I wanted to do some futures. Those types of things interest me. Like when I look at a team, look at their last year's wins, and then basically what's the bet going to be for this next year, who they've added, etc. Those types of bets interest me more than the in-game bets. But I would like to potentially do some on a very low scale. You know what I mean? I would say that I'm a very low tier, anything like that, but just to make it a little bit interesting on the games that I know that I am going to have a chance, especially to watch, you know?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think I've never been a gambler either. I think just because the house always wins, right? That's what you grow up hearing. Like the house is always going to win. Even in like blackjack, where you might have an edge, it's usually the house wins. And I've lost a lot of money that way. And so I think as an entertainment, I think it's great. And that's why DraftKings is winning. Hopefully people aren't gambling the house, or things they can't lose. But I think it's also, you think about the stock market too, it's not gambling. That is truly not gambling the way, at least the way we're investing clients' funds. Eric, I know that a lot of people feel that investing in stocks are risky, but I think it's completely separate. And DraftKings is a sin stock. I don't know. What are your thoughts on those types of investment plays? And
Yeah, I don't have a problem with investing in sin stocks.
Yeah.
You could honestly make a case for almost every company in the S&P 500 that those companies are sin stocks as well. Everyone's got blood on their hands. Yeah, you could literally grab anyone. Grab Apple, for instance. Created the iPhone, forever changed the way we communicate with each other. Huge benefits to society. But we've also seen rates of teen depression spike, and they can actually pinpoint it back to the release of the iPhone. So yeah, everyone's got blood on their hands. I don't have a problem with sin stocks. But I do have a question for you and Bill. You guys have kids who are going to working their way up towards the legal gambling age.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to have to talk to them as they get older about gambling, or maybe prevent them from downloading some of these apps until they're older, things like that? Is that going to be a discussion in the household? Yeah, I wanted to throw it back to either of you guys.
I would just, I don't know. It's not top of mind. I think there's a lot of things that are bigger topics right now, but I think as they approach that age and they're getting interested in gambling, I think it's something you got to have a discussion with your kids about. And For me, I just grew up, it was like, hey, this is a entertainment only. You never gamble more than you can lose. My dad always viewed it as like, all right, it's like a couple $100 and you're expending that money over the course of the night. And that's his entertainment, whether you're playing blackjack at the casino or maybe it's throwing maybe $50 or $100 down on a DraftKings game. That's the entertainment piece. And I think you always have to go in saying this money is gone. You're like, I'm as if you're going to the movies or a concert. Like that money is gone.
Yeah, nice dinner out or something like that, right?
More bet, Justin, I can make
it back. Well, that's where that's my mindset is on gambling. It's just gone. I'm paying for entertainment and that's it. I don't expect to win anything. If I do, it's icing on the cake. Great. I got a free night out. Bill, I don't know what you think. Is that something?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally the mindset that you have to have with gambling. Yeah. If you start treating it as, again, like that, addiction's a funny thing, right? People who you never would think would be addicted to, be it substances or be it activities or things along those lines, something gets the hook in people and it really pulls them. I think you just have to be very careful of the habits you form. Gambling is obviously one of them. And if you're not treating it as almost liken it to like soda or something like that, it's like a treat. You know what I mean? Don't have it as a regular thing that you're doing. Yeah. Which is just really not even doing it each week, right? You know what I mean? Just really do it every once in a while as a form of fun. Unfortunately, right? Investing in DraftKings, we want people to be gambling and things like that, somewhat regularity, but I'm hoping that they do it in a responsible manner and just do it so it's not detrimental to their overall. It's something that just for a little fun of entertainment, you're going to spend your money on entertainment in some manner. Yep. That's what putting that game is, putting some money on a game or a future or something like that.
Yeah. Everything, it's important to where you're putting your energy into. And speaking of energy, the next thing on the docket today, Constellation Energy has reopened 3 Mile Island, the infamous 3 Mile Island, known for its nuclear disaster for a long time, but they're reopening. And the reason they're reopening is a purchase agreement with Microsoft in order to power all their AI, nation's global economic technology dependence on the growing AI. They need nuclear power. There's no getting around it. Nuclear plants are the only energy sources that are constantly delivering on that promise, which Joe Dominguez, Constellation Energy president and CEO, has said recently in the press release. This deal is going to create 3,400 jobs and bring in more than $3 billion in state and federal taxes, according to the company. What do you guys think, Eric? We've talked a lot about energy recently, nuclear as a way to fuel the growing needs of the country and maybe the world.
Yeah, it's needed now more than ever with these data centers that are popping up all over the country. Yeah, I have some data. Let me pull it up. So, yeah, we have a supply issue, right? The artificial intelligence is going to use up so much energy, and we don't have the constant source of energy needed right now. Yeah. Nuclear is the solution right now. It produces constant energy, whereas other renewable energies, wind, not always reliable. It's not always a windy day out. So the turbines aren't going to be moving. Yep. Solar, not always reliable. What if it's a cloudy day? Also, solar spikes in the middle of the day. A lot of times we need power later in the day.
At night.
So a lot of that's like a battery storage issue. So nuclear is the solution. You can continuously run it. I had looked up the disaster at 3 Mile Island, and this is actually what I read. Despite the radiation release, there was no detectable health effects on the plant workers or the surrounding public. And that's according to investigations afterwards. So despite what happened, there's that and Chernobyl are the two big ones people talk about. Nuclear is still an incredibly safe source of energy, and it's actually zero carbon emissions, right? The big environmental impact people talk about is actually like just that little bit of waste that's produced, because there's like there's debate about different ways to store that waste. And then it's the water that's needed to cool these plants has to get pushed back into the environment, and it warms like the rivers and tributaries like in the area around it. Why do we need all this energy demand? Everyone knows ChatGPT, the Microsoft product, the artificial intelligence chatbot that everyone's using. it uses 15 times more energy than a Google search query right now. So that's
Wow.
where that energy is needed.
15 times.
Yeah. Yep. Isn't that amazing? So
Yeah.
people will just think, oh, I just asked ChatGPT, no big deal, got the answer. That used a lot of power right there. Just to
I think
generate
even
that
the
one answer.
Google queries now are require using up more because of their AI tools. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, every single company is coming out with their own AI, whether it's actually theirs or they're just implementing ChatGPT. It is becoming omnipresent. You're seeing that with NVIDIA's rise to power to fuel and back that. The other part of the equation, Bill, is the renewable energy and larger energies needed to fuel this. There's also growing demand outside of this area. So I think overall society is needing energy. Do you think nuclear is the end-all be-all solution?
I mean, for a number of years, I've read that, and this is even before AI really came to ultimate prominence, is that if we want to have electric cars and we want to have all these things and make sure we're more renewable and in that sense, that the way the grid was currently constituted, it was never going to be able to support. I think, I'm not sure what the exact percentage is, but of cars on the road today, but maybe it's 3 or 5% or something like that. And if they want to get it to 25, 30, 35% of the cars on the road, it was going to be way too much strain on the grid. And they can talk about solar and wind, all these things where it was, but really the only logical answer seemed to be nuclear. And I think it was shied away from for a lot of times. Like it was there, right, for the experts, but everyone else was trying to ignore it in a sense. And I think if you look at the use of power, where it comes from and everything like that, renewables have never really made like a huge impact on the market. It's always if you're getting it from somewhere, you're giving it up someplace else. So they haven't had that. They just haven't had that impact. You know, I think we will get there as technology has increased and everything like that. But nuclear was always an answer. I think what happened with this explosion in AI is it pushed it to the forefront even more, right? Because when they talked about that constant source, that consistent source of energy, nuclear doesn't have those issues. Even gas and things like that, there are some kind of stops in the system, right? That nuclear really gives that consistent source. So these things are able to run at all times. And you're seeing a lot of plays in the energy utility sector, right? Where a lot of utility companies are making that move. And in turn, their stock prices have done very well because of these investments. So with Constellation has done a really good job. We have a holding Vistra Energy that has been a really great performer for us the last couple of years. And when we're looking back a couple of years ago, utilities were the worst performing sector in the market in not too long ago, right? Last couple of months, they've been the best performing sector.
22 going into 23. Yeah, underperformed by a lot. Yes.
Yeah, you looked at the whole market, the market's up, utilities are down big time. I think our utility strategy had done much better than the overall utility market. But that was mainly due to a couple holdings, you know what I mean? Especially Vistra Energy that had done extremely well. It almost performed like some of these tech stocks, right?
High flying tech. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say in 22, it did really well. That was more of a result of the Texas summer. There were a couple, right, factors that made it do well. And then AI it pushed it up to the forefront even more. You're just seeing, and they say that nuclear but gas, all these other things are going to do really well from it too, because they're going to need to pull from a bunch of different sources in order to meet the energy needs and the utility needs.
Justin, do you have the ability to share this chart I threw in at the notes? It's towards the end of the document. It shows our U.S. energy consumption. And basically what the chart shows is that growth of nuclear energy usage had plateaued in the U.S. Other renewable sources were on the rise, hydraulic, wind, solar, and then actually the source of energy that was expanding the most in the U.S. was actually natural gas by a lot, probably at a faster growth rate than renewables. And that was because of fracking, right? Fracking was producing so much natural gas. We're now a net exporter of natural gas, the U.S. And so it's been amazing, right? And we're expecting that renewables would fill that void, but it's actually fracking usage.
It is very interesting. Let me
Imagine Russia had a little something to do with that too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That, and also the U.S. had. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, you can see the light blue line is the natural gas.
Yep.
And then you can see that also coal has been going down drastically. And then there's renewables coming up and meeting nuclear. You should expect nuclear going forward to rise as well. But yeah, very interesting data.
Yeah, I think nuclear's gotten scapegoated as a dirty fuel unfairly. And just run a Google search. There's a lot more articles coming from the big energy suppliers in the country now saying, hey, nuclear is actually a clean option. It should be considered as a green energy. So I agree. I think it's going to spike up from here as the country and the globe needs it. And other countries are doing a lot more innovation around nuclear more and more. The technology has progressed. It's easier to produce. You can produce smaller nuclear plants in more locations. And so I think overall energy units are going to continue to decrease in cost, which will benefit the consumer and innovation and AI as we continue to grow. This is a great chart here.
Yeah, I just think the connotation with nuclear power plant, when you think of nuclear power plants, who do you think of? You think of Chernobyl, right? You think of 3 Mile Island.
Nuclear bombs.
So nuclear bombs, right? You know what I mean? Those are like, I don't know. So those are the things that you're hearing about. And I think that is a worry for the common citizen, right? You know what I mean? Or something like that. Those are the things I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Because obviously it's a very complex way to get energy and things along those lines. And those 3 things that people hear about, they're like, ooh, I'm not so sure about this. I know even in Massachusetts, we had that Plymouth location that recently closed. And I think that was always a source of people were constantly trying to get that closed. That finally did. And why? Just concerns to the health, you know what I mean, of the public and things along those lines. People just did not like having that
near them. Yeah.
Near them, right? It was a worrisome thing. And then also too, I can remember in Japan, when they had those awful tsunamis and they were just talking about now this nuclear power plant is under trouble. And I still have the visions in my head of a lot of those people who were running around in the white suits to get it closed up before it collapsed. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Right.
So I just feel every time it's in the media, it's always for bad things. It's never really for, oh, look, this powered all this and we were able to have pretty much low emissions and all these other things that are good coming from it. That's one of the reasons I think there's probably been some limitations, because even people in government, when you think about when utility companies are set forth, they're essentially government-sponsored monopolies in a lot of ways. There's so much regulation with them. There's so much red tape and stuff that has to go through it. So even the people who are voting on this in positions of power, right, they're still, you want to think that they're all well-educated on every single thing, but they're still the, common folk. And they might say, oh, geez, it's dangerous. I'm very hesitant, right? You know what I mean? To push forth projects. And I think that's probably another reason. But because of our needs in the energy area, it's going to keep getting pushed to the forefront. And hopefully, I think it will be a good thing for mankind, because we'll be able to solve a lot of our climate issues, whether you believe in them or not. You know what I mean? That's for anybody to I don't want to get into an opinion on that because I don't know enough about it, but it could solve a lot of problems.
It's definitely something that can keep watching. I think energy innovation has to happen. The other interesting piece is storable energy. And you're seeing that's another front we're watching a lot as EVs come out more and more. You have big automakers are investing or delaying investments in the lithium markets. What's your take there, Eric? Do you see EVs continuing or?
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, what's the lithium supplier company that, LAC is the ticker symbol.
Yeah.
But
Lithium,
if you look at it,
America's, right?
Yeah. Lithium America. If you look at its performance, it's down like 60, 70% from its height. And a lot of that's related to actually, I think it was oversupply in the market now, but they expect demand to go up going forward, which should continue to increase the prices of lithium. But I think people got a little ahead of it initially, and that's why that stock's gone down a lot. People were very excited, piling in money right around the pandemic.
A lot of hype around Tesla, right? Other electronic
Yeah.
vehicles and things like that at that time. So I think that played a huge role in it, because you heard about, oh, we have this huge need for lithium, things like that for all these electronic vehicles. And so,
Well, I think they're finding a lot. It's I don't know. Recently, there was an article that GM delayed its $330 million investment in Lithium Americas, and they do have. It's shocking because I read a stat. They've got to, in order to meet their like 2030 demand for EVs, they have to mine an incredible amount of lithium out of the earth to do that. And a lot of people don't realize how much energy that takes to get that out of the earth. There's a lot of innovation around that. I think it's an interesting area to watch, Eric, to really see, and the demand that correlates with it. Like, is demand for EVs continuing to go up?
Right. And there's international stuff to look at, right? Because a lot of the lithium right now comes from China.
Yeah.
And that's, the Lithium Americas company. Their whole thing is trying to mine it in the U.S. I know there's that valley in Nevada that they're looking at as a potential spot to mine a lot of lithium, but they got to build a lot of infrastructure around it. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening in the future. And global politics, will there be tariffs, put further tariffs on imports of lithium from China, things like that are something to monitor.
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, any investment or any long-term investment, it just has ebbs and flows, because there's just things that don't get thought of. I know an electronic vehicle sounds awesome, right? On the surface level, right? Everything is, listen, you don't have to fill up your tank. You can be fully charged at the house. But if there's not, they really need to build out the infrastructure of having more charging stations. And, you know what I mean? There's so many things that go into it that might keep people away from that penetrating the market as much as they're talking about. As long as all that stuff, but as that happens and as those things come up that people say, that's a deterrent for me to get into that. There's going to be oversupply in certain areas, and then the demand needs to catch up. It's like a classic economics. And I think you're seeing that with lithium, right? They thought there was a huge demand for, and we'll go back to EVs, right? Electronic vehicles. And then people said, okay, yeah, there's some problems with some of these EVs, and maybe how long you can travel with them, and maybe some limitations with them. So that caused maybe a little bit of pullback, and obviously stimulus, right? So because it was such in the news, I think we saw that with a ton of pandemic stocks. If it was a hot topic, right, it seemed to do well, right? Because there was a lot of extra money in the market with all the stimulus. But now that's cooled. And again, there's been some questions. I think long term, right? You know what I mean? I'm sure it's going to do well, but there's always going to be pullbacks in any type of investment, because things are going to get a little overstimulated, we'll say.
Yeah. Speaking of pullbacks, let's just switch topics to the next one, because we're running out of time. Lululemon and Nike dropped 50% from their top, both in recent news headlines. Nike seems like they are struggling, lack of innovation possibly, but Lululemon is also seeing that pullback. Interestingly enough, a lot of people anecdotally will say, hey, they're wearing Lululemon more and more. They've been appealing to men, but sales are down, and the stock is reflecting that. What do you guys think, Bill? Are you a big athleisure fan? Is athleisure dwindling, or more people returning to the office, and maybe therefore they don't need the athleisure work from home clothes? Or what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I think the athleisure, obviously, people wanted to be comfortable. If they weren't going in the office, there was a huge push. I know that even my wife talks about Lululemon, how they just seem to fit better. A lot of the clothes, for whatever reason, to me, some of the stuff looks exactly the same, but she's, this doesn't pull down or fall down as much, something like that. They seem to have a better, almost like technology, right, in how they're fitting clothes. So I think that was a huge thing during the pandemic, and continued to be actually for a little while afterward. But why it's pulled back as much as that, I don't know. Maybe that those growth rates, right? It's still just a clothing brand, so maybe those growth rates got a little out of control. Market's been adjusting, right, since then, and that they've also made some investments that prompted the stock price to go up. I remember they had a big investment in this thing called a mirror, right? And everyone was like, oh, this is a way they can have it work out, and people can then sell their clothing through this thing and stuff like that. Man, now I want to say that they dumped They closed it down. It
My
just
bad.
didn't do anything for them. So there's some stuff that hasn't worked out. You got some excess cash, you try to do some stuff, and it's nice to at least make money as opposed to it just blowing up altogether. You know what I mean? That's never a good thing.
Yeah.
So I think coupled with the going back to work, maybe people bought so much of the stuff, right? They don't need it. You know what I mean? There was a big demand for it, but what's the life cycle on a pair of yoga pants? I'm sure it's
It's high. It's a
5,
long,
6, 7 years. If you bought in the last couple of years, and it's not cheap, right? It's not cheap for the common consumer. So
no, it's
you
not.
buy something like that, you're not going to get a new pair every 6 months or anything like that. You're going to wear those for several years. And they were high quality. So you're going to get a long use out of it. I think maybe that's what they're adjusting. You know what I mean, too, is that they were in a huge growth period. There was a lot of demand for it. I think demand has slowed down for that. And then you couple with the fact that people don't, you don't need to get a new pair every 3 months. So
Right.
that probably was playing a big role.
It's
you know?
definitely a big investment and it lasts long. I think there's a lot to it. I've seen a lot of competitors pop up in the last 2 years. Viore is one. There's Travis Matthew, right? Another one that's come out. You've Alo, and then on the Nike side, like on the running side, Eric, you've got, Hoka is a new one. On Running is massive. Olukai, they seem to be eating and chipping away at their base. What are your thoughts? Are you wearing, personally, what are you thinking? Are you wearing more?
I'm repping Nike. I have a Nike hat on right now.
There you go.
But what I was reading, what the analysts were saying about Nike specific was a lot of it, innovation issues, but a lot of it had to do with growth issues in China. 15% of Nike's revenue actually comes from consumers in China. And Chinese economy has slowed down
a lot
since COVID. And they have their youth unemployment level has gone from about 10% to 20%. And think about it. Those are the kids buying Nike high tops, buying the gear, all that stuff, the jerseys. And when their income's eroded, they're not going to be buying Nike stuff. And then also what Bill was talking about with Nike and Lulu is the price point. Inflation's really hurt them in the US. When you're selling your clothes at $90, $100 price point, the younger consumer is going to go for fast fashion instead, where they can buy something for 30, 40, or $40 and then get the next style quickly. The fast fashion industry is projected to grow at a 9% rate per year through 2029. Let's see. And the market value worldwide is currently $106 billion in fast fashion. It's going to be $185 billion in 2027. So it's growing dramatically. And that's where you're seeing younger consumers spend their money, which has benefited this kind of move into fast fashion has benefited the discount retailers like TJ Maxx, where we've seen Lulu and Nike drop 30, 50% at certain points over the past 2 years. We've actually seen TJ Maxx double. And that's actually a company we have in our strategy right now. So it's been a very
real quick.
Yeah.
That's been a great performer for us.
And honestly, I feel we had been monitoring its earnings, looking at what the analysts were saying, but we also felt like TJ Maxx is a safer company, especially in an economic downturn. People are going to go there versus Lulu and a Nike.
There's a flight to value.
Yep.
Oh yeah. It's funny too. This is just on a personal level, but I have some friends and stuff like that who they might have their own they're graphic artists, right? So they'll do jerseys and they'll do, things like that. And a lot of times they're saying like, listen, like the stuff that we're selling for this much money, it's made on like the left side of the factory where like Nike stuff is in the same factory. It's almost the same stuff, but very similar stuff. We're just getting it for, I don't want to say pennies on the dollar, but much cheaper than what you're paying for some of that stuff at retail stores and things along those lines. So
I think that's true. Consumers have heard and wisened up to that. You have the rise of more transparent sourcing, like Alibaba, for example. You could basically track down the suppliers, a lot of these big name brands, and probably purchase your own for a fraction, a very small percentage. You're going to source volume. And I think that's probably what's given rise to the competitors like Viore, On Running, and they're super high-end name brands now that have emerged out of COVID, really, over the past 3-4 years.
It'll be interesting with Nike, too, with all this recent stimulus, cutting rates. I don't know if anyone been paying attention, especially the last couple of days. There's been a massive stimulus coming from China. And they actually have had
Yes.
the best week since 2008, their stock market, with response to every, because it's been a struggle for China for the last little bit, and then the year and a half. It'd be interesting with this stimulus if we do see Nike respond, especially with the change in CEO. Someone I think who's been there almost his entire career. He's kind of versus the previous CEO who was like more of a business consultant, oddly enough, right? So when you think of, who was the head of Nike? Who started Nike? Phil Knight.
Phil Knight.
Yeah.
So intertwined with the culture, running.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you guys saw the Michael Jordan,
love that
that
documentary.
movie.
Well, the
yeah,
movie, yeah.
the movie, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
talking about it. He's just talking about Nike. The finish
awesome.
line is not the destination. Like the running is the destination, right? You think it's the finish line, but really it's just the act of getting out there and doing it. That's the journey is actually the destination. You don't
Yeah,
realize it
yeah.
at the time. And just talking about Nike and their philosophy, everything like that. I personally think of Nike, it's almost like a stale brand, like right now. You know what I mean? Obviously, the Jordan, iconic, everything about that, their shoes and fashion, and it's now become, talking about athleisure, right? Nikes and Jordans are like, they're worn with suits all the time. It's everywhere, whether you had Robert Kraft
Oh, yeah.
of the Patriots. He's famous for wearing he's obviously got his Lumberg. Doesn't wear them as much anymore, but he used to have the Bill Lumberg shirt. But now it's more the fact that he wears Nikes all the time with
Oh.
his stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can get back to their roots, become a little less stale. I think, I don't know if whatever reason, their products and stuff like that, even when I talk to Kirk in our office, he talks about their tennis line because it used to be so great. Now it's not where it was.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
I
mean?
think
When you
it's
talk about grassroots, you hear this from so many people. So
Nike specifically has wandered away from its roots. I think it's gotten maybe it's cultural or not, but the items they're coming out with are very progressive in style. And I think they've almost tried to be too progressive on that innovation curve. And it's missed a lot of like mainstream consumers. And it's like, it's not even speaking to them anymore. So just from a branding and marketing level, I think they've been missing the mark. Hopefully their new CEO can right the ship. Whereas like at least Lululemon is still on the mark with a lot of its clothing. I think they're just facing, increased competition.
Yeah. If you look at, I was looking at the JP Morgan analyst revenue growth projections, and Lulu's is actually expected to grow significantly. It was just overvalued. Well, like what Bill was talking about. And then
Yeah.
Nike's revenue is actually expected to be flat over the next few years. So yeah, that's the big issue.
yeah, they got to innovate. They really,
Yeah,
they do.
for sure.
They got to, it's just I think it's just a stale brand. They talk about too, like the retail stores and stuff like that, how it used to be like an experience going in there. And now it's, I don't know, going into any old place, it's just doesn't have that pop that it used to have. So I would hope that their new CEO they got to somehow, like you said, Justin, too, they got to retool their marketing. They have to retool their innovation. I think of them as a sporting goods company, and I just don't see them like that anymore. They are,
Yeah.
but it's just not the way it should be. And that's something they've got to fix in order to grow as a company, right? Or else,
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's the risk you take when you start to stray away from the core pillars of what made you a great brand. And I feel more and more in just sample size of one here, but Nike does not speak to me as like an elite performance brand anymore for sports. It's less and less that. I think they crossed into this, fashion, and they tried to play that card.
Yeah.
I just think it's missing the mark.
Which is fine as to have a certain part, right, of your operations and stuff like that. But I think they just pushed it too, you know what I mean? Too much, like just too much.
Mhm.
And yes, you got to state your core principles, right, of always got to be your main growth engine. And then, you can have some stuff, right, that kind of roots off and things like that. I feel like they got too far away from it. Cause they used to be, in basketball, any sport, right? Any sport, you could say Nike, you're like, they got some market share there. They have this, and I just don't, again, I feel like it's dwindling in all areas of sports, not on the upward trajectory or even maintaining,
all the
right?
all the smaller brands that are specific to each sport. Think of like CrossFit with Noble, for instance. Like,
Yep.
they dominate that sport specifically, but you have that across every sport. Whereas I feel like growing up, it was Nike and everyone else. So it's a
Yep.
whole thing.
Totally. Yeah. And you have other brands that are not, New Balance here in Boston, not publicly traded, but they're crushing and they're making more and more inroads into the sporting world and becoming more of that brand, in addition to they're simultaneously finding success and lifestyle and sporting. So it is interesting.
And
to
they're
see.
still known as a running company, right?
right.
For the
That's
most
right,
part,
yeah.
they do all this other stuff, but again, sticking with your core, doing, you know what I mean? Like, they're known as a top tier running company, and then they're like, listen, we do running stuff really well, but we're also going to do this. You know what I mean? We're also going to, like,
made
I
sizable
got a pair,
investments.
I got a pair of New Balance tennis shoes on right now. They're great. You know what I mean? They're so comfy, helping
You
my
got the
pickleball
New
game.
Balance dad shoes on?
Oh yeah, I got my pickleball game. You know what I mean?
They're the
When I get
90s
to
ones?
play. What's that?
Those 90s dad New Balance shoes?
Oh yeah,
Do you know
of
what
course,
I'm talking about?
of course I know. I know exactly what you're talking.
Are you wearing those right
I might have a pair. I'm not. Now these are a little more, maybe a little more fashionable. You know what I mean? Than
Yeah.
common tennis shoes. I will get. People
Yeah.
will make a joke. Oh, your dad, New Balance. Your dad, New Balance. You know what I mean? I've heard that a few times, and I immediately just laugh at them or scoff at them. I say, you don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. These things are high
Yeah.
fashion.
The CMO of New Balance, Chris Davis, has done a great job just positioning the brand, and we should have him on the show next time. I think he'd be a great guest. Chris, if you're listening, let's get you on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey guys, this has been a great week, another great week. If you're listening, thank you for being here with us. Stay tuned for another episode of Wealth Wisdom next week. Next Friday, we'll be dropping, and we hope to see you soon.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.